This is a podcast from the Business Times.
They are known to be quite expensive. Spend an afternoon walking around the tour agencies to see whether they have any sort of last-minute deals. He ended up booking a room on this boat at last minute, and I think it was half the price.
Travel, say, from Paris to Brussels for as low as €1. You stay in overwater villas, which can cost upwards of $500 a night. I spent less than $1,000 on a 5-day, 5-night trip.
We're eyeball deep in June and the summer holiday season. And maybe we can't employ the whole plan ahead for big savings tip, but have no fear, there are still money-saving tips you can follow, even though it's already peak travel period, school halls and such. This is Money Hacks, a podcast series by the Business Times, where we explore useful financial tips to help you on your money managing and wealth growing journey. I'm Howie Lim.
Airfare can be costly during peak periods. Leverage credit card rewards points and miles redemption to book ahead way advance. Setting up a multi-currency account is also one great way to save on overseas card transaction fees. Exchange foreign currencies when rates are in their favor. Convert their foreign currency back to Sing dollar anytime.
Diane Chang is the executive director of the consumer banking group at DBS Bank. She's not wrong. Peak period is scary, and prices can go up as much as 30%. But take heart, there are still some money-saving hacks available, so you don't have to break the bank to go on that much-anticipated vacation.
In fact, just last week, my dad told me he was traveling to Japan. So what I did was that I transferred my unspent Japanese yen to his multi-currency account, so he needed to have to exchange more.
That's looking like a top trend in 2024, saving money on foreign exchange while traveling.
Some of these have the wallets. So for example, things like Wise Bank is another one that I use a lot of as well. Wise or Revolut, where you can pre-change the money beforehand. So for example, now with Japan, the rates are pretty good. If you can find a good rate to kind of exchange the money beforehand, you can kind of lock that in first and you know exactly how much you are spending already before you even go there.
Jaclynn Seah is also known as the occasional traveler because, well, she works full-time and also writes a travel blog. Planning is big on her agenda because she's always trying to figure out what to do with her limited leave time and hopes to inspire other people like her to travel a little bit more.
The thing about money and time is that sometimes they are kind of mutually exclusive. So sometimes when you do have limited time, you do have to pay a little bit more. But, obviously we do want to try and save as much money as we can. Also boils down to a little bit to your travel style and finding out what works best for you. My kind of travel style is something I call a flash packer.
Okay, can't say I've heard that one before, but then again, I haven't traveled in 5 years. Apparently it means a total immersion travel experience and still adhering to modest accommodation and meal budgets. Isabel Leong is a media and content strategist, but Bel Around the World is what she does best, traveling and blogging about it full time. I didn't quite get to ask her what kind of traveler she is. Gotta focus. How to save money is the theme.
Using miles are definitely a surefire way to get upgrades and to be able to fly to destinations that you wouldn't ever consider. Personally, I have not gone down that route because for me as a long-term traveler and to make it sustainable, I'm always looking at what are my best options. So that doesn't necessarily translate to always flying with the same partner airlines. I tend to go for local flights, like it could be Vueling, it could be ITA Airways. So depending on where I am, I will just opt for maybe a local flight.
Basically getting a credit card that gives you the best way to accumulate points and then maybe sometimes exchange for miles as well. If you want to do this, I have kind of tried this before because all my friends are like, yeah, I've gotten this credit card and then I've managed to exchange and go on suites in SIA, for example, just because of the number of miles they managed to accumulate. Of course, it sounds very enticing, but when you actually get down to doing it, it does take quite a lot of work.
Jaclynn wasn't too successful in this regard. She told me she only managed to score herself an air ticket to Bangkok. Accommodations is the other big-ticket item on which many hope to save money. There's a trick you could try, even for vacation rentals.
I would usually try to reach out to the owners directly or the hotels directly to ask if they offer long-term discounts. In terms of booking accommodation as well, instead of staying right in the prime center, which is usually going to be the most expensive one, I would often recommend readers to maybe stay more in the suburbs, stay more in neighborhood locations, and then take public transport. Because if you're visiting popular cities like Venice or Milan or Madrid, public transportation can be really accessible and easy to navigate.
So when it comes to hotels, I usually use something like booking.com, like an aggregator where you can kind of easily search and get a sense of what the prices are. And then maybe when you find a hotel that has good reviews and the price is kind of within what you're looking for, you go and look on other aggregator sites to see which one gives you the cheapest price. Or you go direct to the hotel, because a lot of times either emailing them directly or using their booking system on their website, you can actually get good deals. For example, I think I was in Taiwan. I found a nice little guest house on booking.com, and they reached out to me and said, hey, if you book through us directly, we can make you a package or we can give you something cheaper.
Still to come.
I also travel cheaply is by either house sitting or pet sitting, which I got into it a couple years ago.
Saving goes beyond deals and steal, so it's about protecting what you have, payment security.
More in a moment.
The Business Times podcasts. Relevant, incisive, compelling content by some of the newsroom's most respected correspondents in markets, wealth management, and current affairs. Available on all your favorite audio content apps and at www.businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts.
And now, back to Money Hacks from the Business Times.
We've covered hacks which will help you save money when it comes to air tickets and accommodation. And the top hack from searching the internet says planning is a must. But for the more adventurous and risk takers, not planning can also yield its rewards. Here's Jaclynn Seah, the occasional traveler, one of the travel bloggers we're speaking to today.
One of the cheapest trips I've done, I think this would have been when I was on my career break. So I spent 4 months in South America at that point in time, and I was in the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador, and they are known to be quite expensive, especially if you book one of those week-long sort of boat trips where you stay on the boat and you get to explore the different islands. Instead of pre-booking a trip, what I did was travel to the island and then kind of spend an afternoon sort of walking around the tour agencies to see whether they have any sort of last-minute deals. And I know I mentioned earlier that last-minute deals are not always the best way to get good deals, but because these boats already kind of have to leave and they do have to fill the spaces, so they do have some pretty good prices that you can get if you are willing to take the chance and have a little bit of flexibility with your timing, because you have to sort of just go out whenever the boat is ready. Quite interestingly, I ran into another girl who I met in a hostel. We ended up booking a room on this boat at last minute, and I think it was half the price. And we were quite lucky. And it was nice to be able to see the Galapagos on a slightly cheaper budget. Although maybe our boat might not have been as luxurious as some of the really fancy ones that were going out there, but it was something that fit my needs, my travel style.
Half price? Wow. And speaking of boats and transportation, that's something that can get quite expensive as well, especially if you want to see the sights, join the tours, and explore neighboring cities and towns. Here's Bel from Bel Around the World.
Especially in Europe, it's much more cost-effective to be on the ground traveling than flying from place to place all the time. So there are bus companies like Flixbus that allow you to travel, say, from Paris to Brussels for as low as €1. Megabus that operates around the UK. So those are like £1 buses, depending on where you are. So since we're talking about transportation, even with rail, there are rail passes. Like in Japan, there are plenty of rail passes that could make it more bang for your buck, as well as U-rail passes. There is that opportunity cost of time. But even small tweaks like Uber is a very common app for you to get private hires, private taxis. In Indonesia, instead of Grab, we use Gojek because it's considerably more favorable in terms of pricing. In Europe, we use Bolt or InDriver, depending on the region of Europe that you are in. And that could save you a few couple of bucks.
Even though everyone says it, that planning is the best way to go, you don't have to plan as far in advance if you're a solo traveler. But for families and groups, it can be up to 6 months ahead of the time you want to travel.
There's some wisdom in making bookings ahead to get the best prices and secure your dream accommodation. And based on the bookings that we've seen on our marketplace, we found that our customers have been scheduling their trips 3 to 6 months ahead of their travel dates. The solo travelers who are more spontaneous, they would plan their trips about 2 months ahead, half the time taken by a typical group traveler.
So, for family travel, it's always tough because you have school holidays that you need to worry about. Usually, I try and sign up to different mailing lists and then I just look for the best promotion. And the earlier you book, usually the better deals you can get when it comes to prices. And also, like for hotel, sometimes people think that, being able to get last-minute bookings sometimes means that they will drop the prices and they will discount things for you, which is true in some cases, but not always true. I find it that most of the time you get better deals when you're able to book early. But it also kind of depends on where you're booking. So for example, if you're in Europe, when you're taking the train, if you book those train tickets early, you can get really good prices as compared to booking it like the night before, where the prices are usually the highest. It does require quite a lot of research to be able to get the good prices. For me personally, when I travel, I kind of like to have a little bit of spontaneity. But now I've realized also when it comes to spontaneity, sometimes it also means I might need to pay a little bit more. Versus if I plan everything quite well beforehand, at least when it comes to maybe like transport and accommodation, I usually can get better prices.
There's that word again, research. But it does seem the best way to stretch your dollar, finding hidden gems and the unbeaten path.
There is this other tip I wanted to share with regards to accommodation, and I don't think many people know about it unless you do extensive research. If let's say you're traveling solo, but you're afraid of traveling solo, especially for us women, there are travel groups, Facebook groups out there where there are hosts that are more than happy to host you sometimes, assuming everything checks out. There are actually other female hosts out there who would be happily willing to host you. So in the same vein as couch surfing, people are happily willing to host you because they get to learn about different cultural exchange stories. Maybe you get to cook for them, cook for each other. And so if you look at such travel forums, you sometimes may be able to score free accommodation that way as well.
Of course, technological advancements have helped a great deal and can be utilized to help pinch pennies.
Tech has just become so essential. I'm of the age where back in the day, I still actually, had to navigate certain places by using paper maps, and you have phones. But technology today, what I especially love are things like eSIMs. eSIM cards are just so convenient because in the past, if you wanted to connect overseas, you either had to sign up to a very expensive data roaming plan, and you had really limited data for that. So it's very hard for you to try and make bookings or look for information when you're on the go. Or you had to just rely on Wi-Fi, which is not always the most reliable. With eSIM cards, you don't even have to worry about buying the SIM card at the airport. You can kind of get all this set up before you go.
Diane from DBS is a big proponent of tech helping as well.
Definitely prices of goods and cost of living has risen in the past year especially. Since 2013, DBS has been one of the front runners in multi-currency solution for our customer in saving and spending and investing needs. This means we have had a head start in making our solutions more intuitive as well as seamless.
Thank you, Diane Chang, Executive Director of the Consumer Banking Group at DBS Bank, Isabel Leong, blogger of Bel Around the World, and the occasional traveller, Jaclynn Seah. Next time, what's the outlook for S-REITs for the rest of the year? Fingers crossed we have some good news from our analyst guests. This has been Money Hacks for the Business Times. I'm Howie Lim. Till next time.
This is a podcast by the Business Times. Find more BT podcasts at businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is meant to provide general information only. SPH Media accepts no liability for loss arising from any reliance on the podcast or use of third parties' products and services. Please consult professional advisors for independent advice.